We subtract not so we can add.
Right.
We don't. It's a different kind of math.
That's really
Fasting
good.
is a different. We don't subtract so that we can add.
Yeah.
We subtract so that we can multiply.
Yes. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
See what I'm saying? The arithmetic, the math with fasting is that the margin I create, abstain, subtraction, allows me to multiply a devotion that I needed to have anyways.
Yeah.
At and it goes, okay, in this specific time, this specific season, for this specific purpose, with this specific discipline. So in fasting, the arithmetic is subtraction leads to multiplication, not subtraction leads to addition.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
I'm going.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm gonna be honest with you, folks. Sometimes the little chatter goes on right before 3, 2, 1, record. And it's all Jeff's fault, because I'm over here serious. I'm praying. I'm over here praying, and Jeff's like, let me just crack some jokes.
Oh, man. Listen, I'm just sorry, man.
You don't have a Lent mindset.
Listen,
Where'd your Lent mindset go?
Hey, you know what? I need to spend time in prayer. I need to go and
There you
shut
go.
my door, find me a private room.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, this is why Lent season is so important, man.
Yes, it is.
It is to help refocus us, you know,
is.
and to reshape us and all that.
It
stuff.
is.
And give us some discipline.
All right, I'm gonna do the recap.
Okay.
Because you're gonna talk to us about fasting.
Yes.
I'm gonna try to do this quick.
Okay. Hey, man, take your time.
Appreciate it. Take your time. Expound upon a couple things, brother. I'll just be sitting right here. Okay, so Lent, a tradition of 40 days leading up to Easter, the season before Easter, a season of prayer and fasting typically. It became very official in 325, I believe, with the Council of Nicaea, in which they designated 40 weekdays where you just eat a little bit each day, prayer and fasting, full meal on you get to eat full meals on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then that lasted for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Then post the Protestant Reformation, it was still a very strong Catholic tradition.
Yeah.
But then the farther removed you got from the Reformation, more Protestant kind of movements, denominations would begin to adapt the season of Lent.
Yeah.
The season of Lent is this 40 days. And then if you were to fast forward to 2024, there are a variety of different expressions of the church that would fall under the broader category of Protestant evangelicalism who observe Lent in one way or the other.
Right.
And what we're saying, and in fact one of the more common ways is to take a portion of Matthew 6 and to look at, okay, we're going to focus the time of Lent, if it has traditionally been a time of sacrifice, of ceasing, of fasting and praying, we're going to focus on caring, we're going to focus on prayer, we're going to focus on fasting.
Yeah.
So in part 1, we looked at, okay, what is a Lent mindset, and then how does that relate to caring for those who are needy?
Right.
What is a Lent mindset? How do we look at prayer through that mindset?
Yeah.
And today we're going to look at fasting. Now, just a very quick reminder, we said there's 4 kind of overarching themes to a Lent mindset.
Yeah.
Number 1, Lent mindset is really a mindset where I go, okay, I'm going to redeem the time.
Right. Yeah.
Be very purposeful with this season of 40 days. Number 2, I'm going to redeem the time in such a way that I'm anticipating this day of celebration, which is the resurrection. And then number 3, that this season of time is going to deepen my devotion. And the deeper my devotion, the stronger my celebration will be. And to accomplish all of this, I'm going to have a very, very specific focus. So, for example, last week when we talked about prayer, we said, okay, so if prayer is your focus, then you got to have a place, you got to have a plan, and you got to have a point.
Yeah.
You got to have this anticipatory element in which it's leading up to celebration. Okay, so in 3.5 minutes, that was the summary of a Lent mindset and how we got from point A to this conversation today.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, Jeff, I'm going to turn my attention to the very next part of what we've been studying. So we started out in Matthew chapter 6. We started out at the beginning of Matthew chapter 6 where he talks about what has traditionally been known as almsgiving or giving to the poor. we said we're going to call that caring. And then we looked at this paradigm for praying. And then he's going to shift, and he's going to talk about fasting. And really, it's a shift, but there's
some consistency.
There's a lot of consistency. And he goes, moreover, when you fast, don't be like the
hypocrites.
Here we are again.
There they are. Consistent
There's
theme.
the consistent theme. Don't be a pretender.
Yep. Don't be an actor.
Don't be like a play actor trying to put on a show with a sad countenance. Okay, now I'm going to play the part of somebody who is so downtrodden because there's not enough food in me because I love God so much. Okay,
right.
So for they disfigure their faces. They're a committed actor. They disfigure their faces so that they may appear to be fasting. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. Another consistency.
Yep.
So what you see is you see a warning. You see fakeness.
Yep.
And you see that if that's what you're after. Is the approval of men, and the approval of men, as fleeting as that is, as pointless as that is,
absolutely,
as temporary as that is, as powerless as that is, that's your reward.
That is your reward.
Okay?
And it is temporary.
And it is, And I'd say to you, they have their reward. But you, when you fast, anoint your head, wash your face. In other words, prepare yourself. So that you may not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who is in heaven in the secret place. And your Father who sees in secret, another theme, will reward you openly. We see that in all three. In other words, God looks at the heart, to go back to that text in the Old Testament. So very quickly, to fast is to, traditionally it has to do with food, but is to cease from consuming food for a period of time for the purposes of deepening one's devotion. Okay. Now, we fast from all kinds of things today in our day and age because, like you said earlier, we live in a land of plenty. All right. How do I apply a Lent mindset to fasting?
And I love this particular text, Brent, because, in context, what Jesus really speaking to religious leaders, right? And really talking about how they would really be super extra, when it was
like Sermon on the Mount, there was thousands of people.
Right.
There's a few that he was really talking about.
And he's talking about how they would disfigure their have this disfiguring of their faces, where their face would be twisted. They put on old clothes, put ash and dirt on their face. Like they really wanted you to know, hey, look at me. I am fasting right now, and like you talked about that, woe is me. And so Jesus really kind of talking about them and like, hey, this is the wrong way to approach fasting. And when you see this text, it's three things that you've already articulated, but just recap. He says, hey, fasting as hypocrites, as these religious leaders, that's wrong. He's saying, hey, when you fast, don't do that, and he says fasting for recognition, that's wrong. So don't be a hypocrite, don't do it in a way where you want to be seen. That's wrong. Don't be a hypocrite. But he says also, as you mentioned, he talks about the reality that, hey, your reward is temporary because people are going to notice you in the moment, but then but the byproduct of that is you're unrecognizable to your Father because he wants you to do it in secrecy. And so what does that mean for us, practically speaking? And so, there's 5 practices, that when we talk about that Lent mindset that I really just wanted to kind of highlight right now for us as we kind of look at this whole idea based on what Jesus is saying. Number 1, which is, we've already kind of hit this on. When we fast, we must practice, in secrecy. Meaning that there may be some things from a practical standpoint, it may not be food, but I don't need to have this shirt that says, hey, I'm not eating meat for 40 days, but I'm doing it in secrecy. Why? Because we want to make sure that we're protecting that desire to be prideful, and hypocritical in our fast. So that, again, as we see the progression and the overlap and the similarities, we're talking about caring for others and how to pray, that it isn't about being seen by many. It's about connecting to the one.
There's a self-righteous pretender in all of us.
Yes.
And what he's saying is you've got to deny that part of you.
Yeah. And he says, you don't have to announce that you're fasting, so be careful. And so maybe from a very practical standpoint, he's just very 5 practical nuggets. Like, hey, when you talk about having that mindset, you want to practice it in secrecy. So identify what that thing you're going to abstain from. What is going to be the thing that you're going to push back from? What is that thing that is going to be a sacrifice for you? Very practically, so I know, for Quo and I, there are things that we'll say, hey, we're going to push away from. Maybe we're not eating at all, or maybe we're fasting from certain foods. Sometimes, even early on with our children, we would say, hey, especially because we love to fry everything, no fried foods or whatever. I mean, so you can go as simple or as deep as possible. But, so number one, you want to practice in secrecy. Number two, you got to act normal. And, when you're talking about, when Jesus saying, hey, don't be like the hypocrites who come out, they really kind of they let people know, they announce, there's this announcing that I'm fasting during this time. And so he says that Christ said the disciples should put on the oil on their heads and wash their faces. And when he's not saying have these extravagant practices, but he's saying just care for your body, still groom. Because what a lot of the religious leaders would do is they have on these dirty clothes, and so there's kind of this smell that they would have on them.
Skin.
And they just look crazy, half-assed. He said, no, be normal. Put on the oil on your head and your face. Wash your face. Groom yourself as you would do normally every day. So again, it comes back to this idea that, hey, I'm going to practice something that should be a part of my regular rituals of having certain disciplines in my life as a believer. So it says act normal. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is we must focus on God alone and not on others. And so during this time of fasting, it isn't that I'm focusing, oh, Brent, man, me and you both, bro, like, let's stop eating meat together or whatever, or we're not focusing on our own struggles of putting this food aside. But no, the focus during this moment, because again, the whole principle of Lent is to center ourselves and focus on God, to make our relationship with him and our time spent with him a priority. And so during this time, focus on God alone and not on others. This is when you're practicing this discipline of fasting, you're not trying to it's not something that is corporate, even though other Christians are doing it. We are, as believers and Christians, we're corporately over the 40 days leading up to Resurrection Sunday. We're all in that Lent season. But this is between you and God. This thing that you're sacrificing, it's between you.
Yeah, you're stopping something.
Yeah.
But you're not just stopping.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just going, okay, there's a void here.
Right.
Now,
exactly.
You're filling that void with something.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so but it's between you and God, and so that's important. And then number 4, I want to kind of run through this because I want us to talk about it, is that we must fervently pray during that time. So now, as we're fasting, we need to go back up to what we just talked about last week, is that we during that time of fasting, that's what should be linked to that time of fasting is time of fervent prayer, that we're praying and fasting, and especially during those times when the flesh is weak because we desire those things that we're abstaining from. Then this is a time that, man, we got to pray. You got to pray while you're fasting, maybe still spending some time of saying, hey, what we talked about is having that set time apart in prayer. You're doing that as well while you're fasting. And so maybe consider linking those two together. It doesn't that you say, I'm stopping that prayer time because now I'm fasting. No, you want to make sure that...
No, you're stopping something to fill the time with
exactly.
something. Yeah,
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So we're still praying, so in every biblical account is what I wrote down here, that prayer and fasting, they're linked together.
Yes,
it's important. And then number 5, we must practice obedient living. That to seek the Lord by fasting is important in our life, because if we're not, then it's just, if we're not doing that where we're trying to focus our time with God, it's just holy hypocrisy. And so if we're not practicing the way that Jesus is saying we should practice fasting here in verse 16, then it's just what I call holy hypocrisy. We're trying to be very religious, we're trying to be seen, but we're doing that in a very hypocritical way. And so we got to make sure that we're doing it in a manner that we're not seeking self-glorification, but we're saying, hey, we want to connect and commune with God. So do it in secrecy, act normal, focus on God alone, not others, pray fervently, and then practice obedient living in the midst of it. That's where we're resetting ourselves during this time of fast. While I'm abstaining, I want to recenter myself so that I can really be a person who's living the obedient, holy, and righteous lifestyle.
I think context is always, historical context is incredibly important for the process of interpretation. And, at this time in history, to sit around and to share a meal was a very social thing. You and I live in a day and age where we can swing through a driveway and eat a sandwich after school on the way to practice or on my way to church, or you know what I mean? Like meals don't have the social value that they once did. I mean, they can, but not to the degree that they used to. And they don't have the social meals don't have a primary social place in culture like they used to. And so what would happen is if you would fast from food, that time around a meal, usually one big meal a day at this time in history, was a couple hours. Sometimes more. In which there was a lot of, which we would slowly eat and we would talk and we would laugh and we would, even when we were done eating, it talks about Jesus would recline. That's because of the way that it was set up, is so that you could stay at the table and you could still discuss. And it was an elongated social activity. And so if I'm not doing that, it's creating a lot of margin for me to do something else.
Right.
And so what in our time, in our day, in our age, do we give a lot of time to for social activity? Right. I mean, it's pretty obvious where I'm headed here. And it's these things. It's our phones and social media and all the platforms and all this. Right. If we were to say, and I'm not saying that this should be the fast that someone does, but it could be. If we were to say, okay, for the season of Lent, I'm going to go on a digital fast, and of course Darren Whitehead wrote a great book on this. But if we were to go on a digital fast in which I went, okay, by that I mean no social media. I'm not going to watch YouTube videos. I'm not going to look at Twitter and TikTok and Instagram Reels and all the different. Right? But maybe you get a dumb phone. Which that's a real thing.
It is a real thing.
Where you can just text and you can call, right? Okay. So I'm going to go on a digital fast where I'm not using my phone to fill a social void. It doesn't have a social primary place anymore in my life. That margin creates margin for me to, in a process, become more fully devoted to Jesus. And that's why you always, obviously in Scripture, see prayer and fasting together. And so the question is, what do I need to fast from that will allow me to create the margin to have that prayer and have that devotion and have that focus and to do the things that we said, a Lent mindset, redeem the time, prepare for celebration, deepen devotion, and have a specific emphasis. What can I fast from that will give me the margin to do that? And I think that's a question that we all have to answer in our own
and it's going to be different. 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 I love what Pastor David Platt, he said. We used the acronym FAST, and just he did it in a way, Brent, that he was helping his church kind of go through the Lent season, and they were going through a fast. And he says, hey, I just want to simplify how to approach fasting and understanding the concept of fasting. So he took the acronym FAST and said the F, focus on God. We've talked about that. The A is abstain from something. That's what he said. It doesn't have to be food, but just something that, from his perspective, as he was sharing with his church, was something that is going to create, to your point, more margin so you can spend time with the Lord.
Can we just stop there for a minute? We subtract not so we can add.
Right.
We don't. It's a different kind of math.
That's really
Fasting
good.
is a different. We don't subtract so that we can add. We subtract so that we can multiply.
Yes. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? The arithmetic, the math with fasting is that the margin I create, abstain, subtraction, allows me to multiply
Right.
a devotion that I needed to have anyways.
Yeah.
At and it goes, okay, in this specific time, this specific season,
Yep.
for this specific purpose, with this specific discipline. So in fasting, the arithmetic is subtraction leads to multiplication, not
Yeah.
subtraction leads to addition.
Yeah, because that's great point, because his S is not subtraction, it's substitute. He says substitute your time, in prayer and or in the word. So to your point, you're absolutely right. It's not subtraction, it's just substituting. You're filling it with something, you're multiplying with something, but you're not taking away. You're building those margins so that you can have more time there. And then the T is, he just says, taste and see that the Lord is good.
Yeah.
In that moment of...
Sounds like you needed to finish the acronym. No, I'm Sorry. What can we put down for T? I've covered the theology of it. Well, sorry.
That's so good.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm trying to...
Sorry.
You do that,
Got a bit of pray anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, it doesn't take long for me to get off topic and stuff.
Yeah.
But I love just some, because sometimes I think we can overcomplicate this discipline of fasting specifically. I think we understand the caring for others. We understand the need for prayer. But, sometimes, in my humble opinion, I think the fasting part, we can overcomplicate it. And this the one that people, as to Jesus's point here in our text, we're the ones that we're letting people know, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry, I can't, and we're really overemphasizing, overcomplicating. No, I think it's important to keep the main thing of understanding as we celebrate the season of Lent, and we look at these three pillars, of Lent, that equally they're all the purpose of them equally is to give us an opportunity again of self-reflection, building those margins, redeeming the time, and having a plan as we anticipate, to your point, Resurrection Sunday, as we anticipate this reality that we get to celebrate that Sunday is coming. And I think that's the beauty of this season, Brent. And then again, as we've mentioned before, the hope is that these disciplines that we are practicing or observing during Lent season will be habits and disciplines that we should be continuing throughout the year, even outside of Lent season. And because I think that this idea of fasting, as Jesus is writing here in Matthew 6, was not exclusive to just Lent season, but Lent season gives us an opportunity to reset ourselves so that we can really focus on those areas that we need to really kind of to get reconnected to those disciplines in our lives. And so I think just from a practical perspective, just figure out what is that thing that you can,
and don't overcomplicate.
Yeah.
Like it could just be food.
It could, exactly.
And there's a reason that food is a good one to abstain from.
Right, yeah.
There's a reason that we could subtract or stop or cease or, fasting literally means to stop or cease or abstain.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason to stop doing that.
Yeah.
So that you can create margin. That might be a good one, but it might be social media.
It might be.
It might be some other activity. Yeah. I'm watching the progression of this text in Matthew 6, which starts with almsgiving, then goes to prayer, and then goes to fasting. So we care for those in need. We acknowledge our own need. We become desperate for our need. And then all that is to lead up to the resurrection.
Yeah.
And you know what happens when we get to Resurrection Sunday? There's no need. It's a day of plenty.
Yeah.
I've never seen somebody stand in the pulpit on an Easter Sunday and go, "Ladies and gentlemen, we got to dedicate this Sunday. There's a lot of need."
Right.
That sermon's not about need.
No.
That sermon is about plenty.
Yeah.
Right? The tomb is empty. Your hearts are full.
Yeah. And he rose with all power. He conquered hell, death, and the grave, and man, and when you think about that's
it's like need, resurrection, no
done.
Need.
Yeah, exactly. And that is, again, not to sound like a broken record, but that's the celebration that we anticipate to have. You know, that's the part. We celebrate that reality that there is no need. There is no longer a need. And I think that's the beauty of the moment, right? That's the beauty of what we get to experience as we get to the end of March this year, and that Resurrection Sunday, of really understanding the significance of the moment, which then gives us purpose in the midst of the sacrifice. You know, as we are in this 40 days leading up to it, there's things, I mean, think about, you know, before there could be a resurrection, there had to first be a crucifixion. You know, there had to be a death, you know, that calls for a tomb to actually be filled before there could be a resurrection. And so, you know, that's what we are. This season of Lent symbolizes, you know, the sacrifice, you know, the killing of our flesh, the dying of self, you know, so that we can celebrate fully and holistically the resurrection.
And I just want to emphasize one last kind of idea. No one, again, we use the word tradition over and over again, Jeff. So there's that's why we call it a Lent mindset. You may focus on caring and praying and fasting, all three during the Lent season. You may focus on all three, but emphasize one over the other because of where you are in your journey.
Fair, yes, absolutely.
You know, but the idea is that you got to have the right mindset. These three texts in Matthew 6 kind of help to frame, and what do they all have in conjunction is that there are those who are trying to fake it. They're self-righteous. They're hypocrites. That's a pretender. They're an actor. And what Jesus is saying is like that's not if that's your motivation. Then you have deprived yourself of eternal life. And so he's going, no, be properly motivated. So what does Lent mindset come down to? It comes down to the very core of our being. Being completely motivated, that invisible labor of our lives. Being that all of our affection is given to all that we know of Jesus Christ, which is celebrated in the resurrection. And so that's why these three texts are so important. There's a correlation of hypocrites. Hey, that's what they want. That's what they get. There's no reward for them. But guess what? If you do it the way God calls you to do it, there's a big reward. There's a big reward.
Man. And I think that there's so much beauty in what we've shared over the last, you know, couple of episodes here, man, and really kind of reminding us of that truth is that as we live as citizens of heaven, and we are, you know, to your point, you know, pilgrims on this journey until we reach the heaven country, man, there is even anticipation of that.
Yes, there is.
And the reason why we get to anticipate, you know, to us getting to the heavenly country is because of what Jesus did for us and because of Resurrection Sunday. You know, and I think, Brent, that is the part that, man, gets me excited. That's the part that makes me feel a sense of gratitude. You know, I'm grateful. You know, for God's goodness, His grace, and His mercy from what He did for us through the death, burial, and resurrection of His Son, Jesus Christ.
You know, I'm just looking at this text, and I didn't put this part in my notes, so forgive me for rabbit trailing for just a minute, Jeff. But, you know, whether it was with caring for the poor or praying or fasting, the hypocrites, they got their reward, right? And then it was temporary, and it was fleeting, and it was powerless, and it didn't mean anything. But you know what happened after that? They needed it again.
They did.
And you know what happens after the resurrection? You don't need anymore.
So
the reward is you know what the reward is? The death of need. The sufficiency of Christ in all things.
Well, and you know what you're saying, Brent, as Jesus is continuing the Sermon on the Mount, and chapter 7 of Matthew, he talks about the wide and the narrow gate. You know, there is that wide gate that is heavily populated, you know, and it looks great. People are getting their fleshly reward. But what does that pathway, that wide path, it ends in a place of destruction. But then there's that narrow gate. You know, it's not heavily populated. It doesn't look exciting. It doesn't look attractive. But guess what? Because of the sacrifice, great is their reward, because that pathway, that pathway Jesus talking about, that narrow gate, it leads to eternal life. You know, and the truth of the matter is, we during this Lent season have an opportunity to not only just reset ourselves, but to also recommit ourselves to say, hey, I'm not going to be a hypocrite on the wide gate and living my life, you know, traveling down the path of the wide gate and that wide pathway, but I'm going to be one who's living again as a citizen of heaven on that narrow gate, because I want to hear my Father in heaven say, well done, thy good and faithful servant.
Amen and amen.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that it's been helpful to discuss a Lent mindset. I hope that during this season, you'll redeem the time, you'll prepare for the celebration, you'll deepen your devotion, and that while you're doing that, you'll have a specific emphasis. I pray that you will get to that glorious day of Easter, Resurrection Sunday, the day in which there is Jesus is alive and the death of need is real. We don't need anything else, because he is all things to us.
Yeah.
So, Father, I pray that you would look forward to that day. I pray that this conversation is helpful to you. I pray that until we meet again, you'd wander well and you'd shine like stars.
Take care, everybody.